Your avoidant ex is going to regret these 5 things the most when they lose you. The first is your unconditional love. This is a big one because despite all of the hardships and things that this avoidant has deliberately put you through because of this avoidant attachment style, you still gave them your all and genuinely loved them and try to do everything that you possibly could to make the relationship work, to understand what is going on and how you guys can try to mend this so that you can have a happy relationship. And despite all of those times when they pushed you away and blamed you and made it seem like you were the problem this whole time, you still stuck around because you genuinely loved them and you cared about them despite all of those different hardships and things and people around you telling you that this person is not meant for you and it's too much because of how their avoidant attachment style is. And this is something that they are going to regret at some point in time because they genuinely believe that every person is going to be like that in some way or some form. But typically, most people don't put up with this when it comes to an avoidant because it is so taxing emotionally, physically, because it takes everything in you to try to day in and day out make this work and to love this person despite all of their attempts to push you away and make it seem like you are the one that is essentially in the wrong because you get too close or you're too needy, whatever that might be. And that type of love is something that they crave and want in their life, but typically they take it for granted because they allow this avoidant attachment style to make them feel like they will always find that in any other person because they have made themselves believe that they can find exactly the type of love that you gave them in another person, because this is their way of convincing themselves that they can just find somebody else just in case you might move on so that they don't have to feel those vulnerable feelings of losing someone like you. So they will convince themselves of this, but there's going to come a time where they're going to have to face this reality and see that you genuinely unconditionally cared, that you genuinely unconditionally loved them, and they took that for granted. Number 2 is that they're going to regret losing the emotional safety that you gave them. You created such a safe place for this avoidant to express how they're feeling, to pull away, to do all of these antics that come with being an avoidant, and still allow them to be in that environment without really any judgment and just wanting to see this person get better and work on these things, and for you to just understand them so that you can have a good relationship, because you know that when things were good you guys could thrive, but this avoidant attachment style just kept coming up. And because you genuinely cared about this person, you tried your best to create a safe place for them to express those vulnerable emotions, to just attempt to work through this and process it, because you knew that this was really what was holding this avoidant back and from you guys having the relationship that you want. And they are going to realize that other people are not going to be willing to do that, right? They're not going to be putting in that effort to try to create that environment and to kind of gradually help them along this process, right? You didn't expect them to change this overnight. You just wanted to essentially understand it, bare minimum, and try to work with it. You weren't even really trying to force them into changing it into those moments. Of course, down the road, you would want to try to see that happen because it's not sustainable and feasible to continue to go through a relationship that is constantly doing this push and pull, but you were just essentially giving them that space and just trying to help them through this, but they didn't want to do that. They kept allowing this avoidant attachment style to stop them and to just run rampant, and a lot of times there's just not that urgency for them to want to make those changes because they want the relationship to work. And this tends to be because they do need to get that professional help from a therapist to kind of work through this, but even then they still could have gave a small compromise to help kind of process this, and they didn't. And while they think again that they're going to be able to find that in another person, they're not going to be able to replicate you, and typically that person is not going to have the same patience as you did. So this is going to be something that they will very quickly learn, and they will essentially regret losing someone like you. Number 3 is that they actually regret never really showing themselves fully. this is a big thing that you may not think happens, but there comes a point in time where they will realize that they didn't allow themselves to express themselves the way that they wanted, right? There's a lot of emotions that an avoidant wants to express, but this avoidant attachment style causes them to essentially not do it. It goes on autopilot, right? Whenever they start to feel that emotion coming up, instead of allowing it to just naturally express itself because they feel comfortable with you and they want to be with you and they love you and all these different things, that attachment style has safeguards to make sure that it doesn't happen. So without them really even recognizing it, because they've been doing this for so long, it will stop them and it will cause them to act different and start to pull away. And you've probably experienced this so many different times where things were great, you guys seem like you're heading in the right direction, and then out of nowhere they just switch up and you're like, what just happened? That is that avoidant attachment style kicking in, causing them to just kind of panic and go into fight or flight mode and feeling the urgency to need to push away from you. And although in the moment it looks so convincing that they want that, it actually tends to not be that way, because deep down they know that this is a problem, right? They don't want to be this way, but because of what happened when they were younger and their caregivers not meeting their emotional needs, they've adopted this way of being to feel like this is how they have to be in order to survive these type of instances where those emotions may come up and feel vulnerable, because it's a threat to their emotional safety. That's how they're feeling about this. But typically there is a part of them that genuinely loves you in the relationship and wanted to see it work, and they realize in those moments when they start to reflect on things that they didn't allow themselves to express themselves in the way that they wanted to, in the way that they know that you would have responded well to, and you guys would have had a strong relationship. So when they are alone, that's when they will start to see this, and they'll regret it because they know that things would have actually worked out if they would have just allowed those emotions to naturally express themselves like anyone else would who didn't have this type of attachment style. Number 4 is that they will regret thinking that you will always be there. This is another big one, because an avoidant really believes that you are always going to be there. And the reason why this does happen is because you have been, to a degree, because you genuinely loved this person and you wanted to try to make things work, kind of reverting back to what we talked about earlier and doing everything that you possibly could. That was your way of trying to show them that you love them and you cared for them and you're willing to do whatever it takes to try to make this work because you're committed. And instead of them seeing that for what it really was, they've kind of looked at this as an opportunity that they can continue to pull away and have this avoidant attachment style run, and you are essentially going to be readily available for them when they want to come back. And that's what they're always banking on, and they've convinced themselves that is always going to happen, because to them that's how they maintain control. And when we talk about an avoidant, we typically see that they want to try to maintain that control because that's what they insist, right? They want that control so that they can not feel those emotions that they don't want to feel and control every single situation so that they're not feeling vulnerable and feeling all those unwanted emotions. And that's really the only way that you can do that, even though it's a facade. But to them, they need to uphold this. So instead of them kind of realizing that potentially they could lose you and the risk of just letting this avoidant attachment style continue and not doing anything about it, they sort of feel comfortable because you've shown those signs before that you will come back. But the moment that you don't do that anymore, this is a huge reality check to them, and they don't know how to respond to this because this goes against their beliefs on that. And usually before, they can use different distractions and way of kind of manipulating what is going on to make them feel like everything is fine. But in that moment when they officially lose you and they realize it, no matter how many times they tell themselves and try to convince it, you can't accept that because it's just not true anymore. And this causes them to really, again, have to face the real reality, and that is they've lost an amazing person like you who was willing to just do everything that you possibly could to, again, try to make this work. And that's something that they regret because they can see all of those different times that they knew it was them and they pulled away and they kind of just took it for granted. And when you told them that, you know, you can't keep doing this, and you still took them back, and you told them even that this is going to end at some point in time, in those moments they had an opportunity to make it better, to try to just, again, make some little progress, and they know this, they essentially did not do that. And that's why the relationship didn't work. And this is where they're starting to really realize that it was always on them, because up until that point, they've been blaming everyone else, especially you, as to why things couldn't work. So this is a reality check that they have, and they realize that they should have took it more seriously and actually try to do something about it when you told them. Which leads perfectly into number 5, and that is they regret not healing sooner because it cost losing you. This is a big reality that an avoidant will come to, whether they tell you or not. They are going to see all of these different things at some point in time. We are all humans no matter what, and we all go through the same type of cycles at some point in time where we're going to have to confront these emotions, and our bodies and minds will do an amazing job to do that because it knows that we need to process these things and be able to move on with our life. So with that, they are going to have to see how much they've lost in losing someone like you, right? You were somebody that they genuinely wanted to be with, but they continued to allow this avoidant attachment style to run rampant without being challenged at all. And we can empathize in understanding that this is something that happened when they were younger, and it's just something that is very challenging for them to work through. But at the end of the day, it doesn't excuse the simple fact that they need to work through this if they want to have a healthy relationship, because these type of relationships are not going to last. A partner that doesn't have this attachment style can only go so long with continuing to do the same kind of push and pull and all these different antics that come with being an avoidant before they can't do it anymore. And in that realization, it's a very pivotal moment for this avoidant, because either they wake up and realize that this is a problem that they need to try to seek that professional help from a therapist to kind of uncover and heal and work through so that they can show up in their next relationship and not continue to repeat this pattern, or they may just, again, run this avoidant attachment style and create this bigger excuse or reason as to why this avoidant attachment style is not on them and it's everyone else, and they'll just simply suppress that down even more, and they'll continue to pass it on into the next relationship and so on and so forth. But this is all on them because they, again, allow this to continue to go on without trying to do anything to try to work through this. And if there's one thing that I hope you can take away from this video, is understanding that you did your absolute best to try to make this work. There was nothing else that you could have done to convince this person, because this was all on them. They had to be the one to want to make this change and to actively go out and figure out how they were going to do it and put it into action. You can only maybe help them to start to realize it, but at the end of the day, they had to be the one to do that. And I hope that you can kind of give yourself the peace to know that there was nothing more that you could have done, because a lot of times when a person goes through this type of relationship, they blame themselves and they still kind of question whether they were actually too needy or they could have done anything better. But you did your best. You are not a psychologist. You didn't know how to work through this. And even if you were, this tends to be not a relationship that you want to actually be in, right? You want to be in a relationship that feels natural and authentic and is just kind of in a flow state for the most part. It's not going to always be perfect. We understand that there's things that you're going to have to work on, but this was an everyday thing that you had to do, and it is draining. And you are probably at a point where you never want to experience something like this. And it's important for you to recognize in this moment that this is something that you don't want. And it's a learning experience for you to kind of build your boundaries and to know what to look out for in another relationship and to know how to essentially handle it. But at the end of the day, you did what was best for you and moving on from this person, or you are still in that phase of moving on, and that's okay. But you need to continue to prioritize yourself and doing what is best for you. I hope that you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.